Good morning, guys. So for today's lesson, we are just going to do a quick review of adding and subtracting fractions that have unlike denominators. So if you remember, in order to add or subtract fractions, they have to have a common denominator or like denominators. And as you can see, our two practice problems on the board do not have like denominators. So before we can add and subtract these fractions, we first have to find common denominators, then we can add. So, the way that you can find common denominators is list out the multiples of your two denominators and find the multiple that they have in common. That's called the least common multiple. The multiple that they have in common, that's the smallest. That's going to help us when we have to reduce fractions to not have to reduce them quite as much. And I know that I've also shown you the trick of you can also just multiply the two denominators to get a common denominator, but that's not always going to be the least common denominator. So if I write out the factors of 5, or the multiples of 5, we're going to have 5, 10, what would come next? 15, then 20. I'm going to pause here. Do you see any multiples on my screen that 3 would have? 15, right? If you're not sure, you can write them out. You would have 3, 6, 9, 12, and then 15. So 15 is our least common multiple that these two denominators have in common. That means that we need to make two new fractions with a denominator of 15. But we're not just picking random fractions. We are making equivalent fractions, or fractions that are equal to our original fractions. They just have a new denominator. So we have to ask ourselves, how did we get from 5 to 15? We multiplied by 3. So whatever we do to the bottom, we must do to the top. So we'll multiply 2 times 3 and get 6. So 2/5 and 6/15 are equivalent fractions. That means if I had one whole, cut it into 5 pieces, and you ate 2 of them, you would be eating the same amount as if I had the same whole, cut it into 15 pieces, and you ate 6 of them. They're equivalent or equal fractions. So we're going to do the same thing with 1/3. How did I get from 3 to 15? Well, I multiplied by 5. So now I need to multiply my numerator by 5, and I know that 1 times 5 is 5. So now I add, but do I add my denominators? No, I don't. I only add my numerators. So my denominator just slides right over, and then 6 plus 5 is 11. And then I check and see, are there any factors that 11 and 15 share? Those are numbers that can be multiplied together to give me 11. The factors of 11 are 1 and 11. So I can say 1 would give me the same fraction, right? 11 divided by 1 would be 11, and 15 divided by 1 would be 15. So then I just check 11. And 15 cannot be divided by 11, right? 11 times nothing gives us 15. So 11 over 15 is in simplest form, and that's our answer for adding fractions. Now we're going to do the same thing, but you can see that this is a subtraction problem. So my denominators are 4 and 3. I'm going to pause for a second, and I want you to write out the factors of 4 and 3. And then when you press play, once you have done that, we will go over them together. Welcome back, guys. So you should have your factors, your multiples written out just like I do. And I found out that the multiple that 4 and 3 share is 12. Now, you didn't have to write out the multiples of 3 because we had already written them out for the first problem. But if you did, that is okay. So we know that the multiple shared by 4 and 3 is 12. So our common denominator is going to be 12. So I'm going to make two new fractions with a denominator of 12, and I have to remember this is a subtraction problem, not an addition problem. And I know it's going to equal a fraction with a denominator of 12, because remember, I don't subtract my denominators. So now we ask ourselves, how did I get from 4 to 12? I multiplied by 3. What I do to the bottom, I must do to the top, and 3 times 3 is 9. And now I have to change 2/3. How did I get from 3 to 12? I multiplied by 4. 2 times 4 is 8. So in order to get my answer, do I do 9 plus 8? No, you're right. This is a subtraction problem. So I do 9 minus 8 and I get 1. So my answer is 1/12. And since my numerator is 1, I know that I cannot reduce my fraction any. So remember, when you are adding and subtracting fractions, you have to look at your two denominators, list their multiples, then you find a common multiple and make equivalent fractions. Once you have done that, you can add or subtract your numerators and your denominator just slides over or stays the same. Make sure to pay attention to whether it's an addition problem or a subtraction problem. And I'll tell you, a good way to check what some options for common denominators would be is to look at the denominator options for your answers, because your assignment is multiple choice. So if your answers all have a denominator of 40, then you already know your common denominator. Okay, so make sure you're using what you have, and good luck on your assignment. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll see you back here tomorrow for a quizzes fraction review.